So now it is time for Outside, and this is the part of the show where I take a look at life as somebody who's had an incredible career. As ever, we talk highs, lows, lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And, of course, with Priti Patel suggesting that her plan to send migrants for processing in Rwanda today, I'm speaking to someone who knows all about the world of immigration, Lord Timothy Kirkhope. He served as a Conservative MP for 10 years, and during that time he was Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Immigration and Border Controls. He went on to be an MEP and now sits in the House of Lords, focusing mainly on issues surrounding the UK's borders and nationality. I'm pleased to say that Lord Kirkhope joins me now from North Yorkshire. Hello, welcome to GBNews. Thank you so much for joining me. So I want to start by...
Hello, Nana. Hi.
It's lovely to talk to you. So talk to me about your career and how you sort of got into politics and what was your reasoning behind that?
Well, like you, Nana, I'm a Geordie by birth.
Me too.
Born in Newcastle upon Tyne. And I suppose being in Newcastle upon Tyne, getting into your teen years, starting to take an interest in politics in the northeast of England back in the 60s, and indeed subsequently until comparatively recently, being a Conservative was a pretty uphill struggle, really. But it seemed to me, as someone who believes in Conservative principles, that it was the right thing to do, to be involved in politics from an early age. And I did get involved, and I was very active indeed, pushing our own position against the majority in that part of the country, which was very heavily Labour, and very heavily, I think, at that time, undemocratic Labour.
Now, you were also a member of the European Parliament, and I used to ask people, can you name any of the MEPs? And no one ever could, because no one really knew what went on in there. So what really went on in the European Parliament? Because I just thought they just had a jolly and just didn't do that much. But what kind of thing went on there? And were there any things that you were specifically part of creating?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, looking back on it, I was there for 17 years, having already been in the House of Commons for 10. And I suppose I could almost claim, no doubt someone will dispute this now, but I think I'm probably the only person alive who served in all 4 legislatures. If you include local government, I was originally a councillor in Northumberland, and then an MP, of course, and then an MEP, and now a member of the House of Lords. So I think that's quite an interesting record. But the European element of it, that was the 17 years that I represented Yorkshire in Brussels and Strasbourg, was an enormously interesting time in my life. I mean, I'm not, people regard anyone like myself, who, of course, I suppose I was a supporter of remaining in the EU, therefore I'm now the Ramoner, and I'm regarded as inevitably therefore a left-winger or something like that. The truth of the matter is I've never been those things, and nor have I ever been a Europhile.
Yeah.
I've always been quizzical and very questioning over the whole activity of Europe. And when I was in the European Parliament, I led one of the major Eurosceptic groups for quite a long time, involved in getting set up and being involved with it in the leadership. So, I was very active in protecting British interests in the European Parliament. But in particular, in my area, as a lawyer, my interests have always been in the field of justice and home affairs. And I am therefore one of the people that drafted quite a number of the European pieces of legislation, which were then shared with the United Kingdom. And particularly in the area of sharing data between criminal agencies to try and deal with crime, such as passenger name records, which was a way of obtaining information from airlines of people traveling so we could detect terrorists at a very early stage. European arrest warrant, which I know is controversial, but I think by and large was a very good way of pulling a whole lot of criminals out of parts of Europe that we couldn't get them out of before we had it. Things like that. Data protection regulation I helped to draft.
So the
Dublin conventions.
It's all the nitty-gritty that really has to be done, and you were really on top of that. So, speaking of that sort of thing, then what do you make of the? Because I know that you've put forward a couple of changes for the Nationality and Borders Bill. What were your main things that you thought needed to be changed about it?
Yeah. Well, look, the first thing is that it is a duty of anyone who runs the Home Office, indeed any government, to protect the citizens of this country. And that includes protecting our borders. Now, we had quite a lot of control over our borders, even when we were EU, whatever anyone else says. I happen to know that. We were opted out of most of the Justice and Home Affairs issues, so we could control our own borders and our own immigration policies. But I, as immigration minister, back in the 90s, but also subsequently, when we were in opposition as a party, I did 2 jobs as a commission chairman looking at asylum and immigration and reporting to the then spokesman in our party in opposition. And one of the areas that I specifically looked at, both as a minister and also as a commission chair, was this whole question of offshoring asylum applications, which is what we're talking about now. And that is dealing with applications away from the places where people arrive in this country to claim asylum.
So what do you think?
And we went into this.
So what do you think of Priti Patel's idea then that people will be sent to Rwanda for offshore processing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sorry, but it doesn't work. We concluded after a hell of a lot of work that it wasn't a good idea. And indeed, many of our plans for offshoring were in fact offshoring under our own territorial jurisdiction, that is, offshoring to locations around our country that we could control. Because the simple fact is this: an asylum seeker, someone who is seeking asylum, cannot be illegal. It doesn't happen. We're talking about illegalities, meaning people will be sent to Rwanda. I mean, there's no illegality in asylum as opposed to immigration. Immigration, you can be illegal and you can be deported, as I did on many occasions, deported lots of people illegally here in immigration. But asylum is different. And under the international law, a person can decide or not decide to claim asylum anywhere. If they claim asylum when they come to this country, then it's our duty to deal with it, not to send it to Rwanda. The sheer cost of it all, incidentally, now is enormous.
But when you said, Timothy, when you said that it didn't work when the offshoring was in this country, I don't think it would work. But if it's to say, to sort of create almost a deterrent so people don't really want to go there for processing, then there's nothing really wrong with Rwanda. Rwanda is another country somewhere else, and it means that people will come here but then be sent to somewhere else. The idea is a deterrent, surely. We simply don't want people to take the journey across the channel. We don't want them to do that.
But we have no control over Rwanda's internal policies. We have no control over the human rights of Rwanda or indeed anything else. And the people, in fact, who come and claim asylum are not claiming asylum in Rwanda. It's as simple as that. We're sending them to Rwanda, not with a view to them getting asylum and then coming back to Britain, but leaving them there for the rest of their lives. I think it is wrong and also enormously expensive. And as far as the deterrent argument is concerned, our job is to deter traffickers, illegal people. They're the illegal people who are using these individuals, trying to traffic them at great cost to them initially. But then these are the illegals we need to tackle. And the best way to tackle them, in my view, is to go in and root them out. We can find them on the continent. We can find them elsewhere, further afield. But it's not, in my view, to then deteriorate the position of these sad individuals.
Well, what about,
I don't think that's what we should be doing.
What about if, because I think one of the reasons is why it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea, but the reason it might work as a deterrent, but it's slightly unfair, would be that there's no other way that people can claim asylum other than actually be in the country. So would it be an idea that perhaps the British could use their embassies around the world where people could try and seek asylum and apply at the embassies that already exist around the world, and also then keep that policy if you come via this route that you may end up being processed in Rwanda, that way giving people an opportunity to actually apply in the country that they're in an embassy, and then we can process it there? Is that not something that the government are considering?
I think, well, I don't know whether the government are considering it. They don't seem to say very much of what they're doing until they do it. Because the Nationality Bill raised this question of offshoring in January. Ministers' replies have always been to deny effectively any particular plans, but all the time they were planning the Rwandan deals. I mean, the truth of the matter is we don't know what they're doing, but certainly you can claim asylum in one of our embassies, wherever they are in the world, are actually part of this country. So you can apply, you can do. And we do need more safe and legal routes. There's no doubt about it.
So I'm surprised they don't do that then. And yes, the Rwanda plan as well, I think that'd probably be OK. But as long as there's another safe and effective route. So since you've obviously been very busy in the field of immigration, do you think that you've served both as an MEP and an MEP, and those roles were different and lots of different challenges. So now what are you getting up to, and where would we find the work that you're doing now? Or have you retired?
No, I've joined the new Parliamentary Assembly, Interparliamentary Assembly between the UK and the EU, which was part of the agreement on when we left the EU that we would have parliamentarians from the European Parliament and our own. And I'm a member of that. We're going to have a first meeting in a couple of times in Brussels. I'm really hoping that we're going to of it. Left the EU. I think everybody's on record as saying that it's still important for us to maintain good relations with the EU countries. And I think that this assembly is a very good example of how we can do that if we take a positive attitude. I mean, some of my colleagues on this assembly have indicated more negative intentions, but it seems to me that actually it is an amazing opportunity for us to at least keep relationships on a sensible footing, because whatever one thinks about Europe and our position and so on in relation to the EU, I think we have to agree that there are going to be a lot of challenges ahead. There are challenges right now with Ukraine and everything else, where we do need to be on, I think, good terms with our neighbours in Europe. And, again, immigration was another example where I think if we were on better terms with the French and a few others, maybe we wouldn't be having to do what the government say we should do now.
Well, Lord Hope, your signal is going a little bit, but it's been really, really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your views, and really good to talk to you on Outside. That is Lord Timothy Kirkhope. He is the Conservative peer and former Immigration Minister.